What if you missed a chance to save someone you loved? And then one morning, you woke up right before the tragedy happened? What would you do? Celeste Thorne used to be a shadow in the halls of the prestigious Westbrook High. But in this second life, she's no longer hiding. As buried footage begins to surface, and those who once laughed at another's pain start to feel the breath of truth creeping up behind them, Celeste knows this isn't just a chance to save the grandmother she loved. It's a reckoning, a warning to anyone who thinks the past can stay buried forever.
I would never forget that night. The night Kira nearly vanished from this bridge. The night when everything seemed to end, but in truth, had only just begun. I sat on the iron rail of Maple Hill Bridge, the night breeze brushing against my skin with a sharp chill. Beneath my dangling feet, the water lay dark and still eerily calm. In my hands, I clutched Kira's old journal. It felt like a second heartbeat, a constant reminder that I had once died. And now, I was alive again, not to forgive. I didn't sleep that night. And by morning, I began to move. The air was thick like lead, pressing down on everything. A heavy silence clung to the tiled floors, to each echoing footstep in the hallway. It felt like the entire school had changed, not with sirens or gossip loud enough to hear, but with something deeper, something simmering beneath the surface. A glance shot sideways, then quickly pulled away. A sentence mid-spoken, cut short the moment I passed. A group of girls who usually giggled behind the math building now scattered like spilled water, each turning away in a different direction. No one said anything, but in that silence were hundreds of questions. Thousands of suspicions, and two could hear them all. I walked slowly past the rows of lockers, letting my palm brush over the cold metal doors like I was feeling for pieces of Kira's memory still floating in the air. My steps were steady, chin lifted, eyes forward. There was no need to scream, no need to cry. I just needed to appear. And that alone was enough to make a whole system that once ignored a girl's pain start to tremble. Across the hallway, Aiden Carter leaned against the wall as he always did. But this time, he wasn't smirking. He wasn't tossing out casual jokes. He wasn't scanning the hall for his next target. He just stood there, shoulders a little stiff, eyes trying to seem indifferent. But I saw it, the dry swallow, the unnatural arch of his brow, a glance toward me, then away so fast it was like he feared my gaze would set fire to every lie he'd ever told. Even Crystal, always perfect, like she'd stepped out of a magazine cover, was pretending to tie her shoelaces. She never bent down in front of anyone, not unless something had knocked her off balance. And today, that something was me. She walked faster than usual. Her eyes darted around like she was searching for hidden cameras. Each step she took looked like she was trying to avoid triggering a curse or unearthing a truth buried too shallow. I didn't have to say a word. I just had to make them feel that I knew. That their days hiding in the dark were already counting down. The sound of chalk on the board was dry, brittle like it could crack in the quiet. I sat by the window, but I wasn't watching the board. Outside, early autumn leaves drifted silently to the ground. And I was silently waiting. Waiting for something that would never happen again, the slow footsteps, the soft soles of Grandma Rose moving down the stone hallway. I remembered her standing quietly outside the classroom door, holding a faded silver lunchbox inside, cold rice balls and pork slices. She never called my name. Just stood there, smiling gently, like waiting for someone was its own kind of joy. I remembered her frail hands touching my forehead in the nurse's office, her eyes filled with panic when I passed out. I remembered her trembling voice apologizing to the teacher, the nurse, for causing trouble, when the only person who deserved an apology was her. Grandma Rose had nothing in her hands, but in her eyes she held my whole world. How many afternoons had I let her stand there alone? How many times did she wait, holding that cold lunch in vain? How many unread messages, unanswered calls, neglected affections drowned beneath the fake busyness I used as an excuse? Guilt clenched my chest like an invisible hand. I took a deep breath, and I knew I couldn't sit here another minute. I had to see her. Today, I returned home like someone lost. Sunset light stretched long across the gray stone walls. The soft taps of my shoes echoed through the hallway, once filled with the scent of cinnamon and fresh pies. Now, all that remained was the sterile smell of antiseptics, the damp scent of old wood, and a silence so cold it crawled beneath the skin. Grandma's room still stood at the end of the hall, right by the round window where she used to keep her herb pots. I pushed the door open. She was asleep. Her face was sunken, her skin pale like melted candle wax. Strands of silver hair fell loosely over her forehead, her breathing fragile and thin as paper. The rocking chair by the window was still there. The dust-covered photo frame still stood on the table. In the photo was me, or rather, Kira, smiling brightly, hugging her tight as if afraid she might disappear. I stood frozen, unable to speak. Something inside me cracked quietly, like the first raindrop before a long autumn storm. I stepped closer, took her hand. "Grandma, I'm home." The words trembled out of me, like something I had kept buried far too long. And for the first time since I came back, I cried. Not from pain, but because, for the first time, I allowed myself to be weak. In front of the only person I never needed to be strong for. Flashback, the past life. I was scrubbing the bakery floor, hands covered in flour, sweat trickling down my back. My phone buzzed. A message from Grandma. "Feeling a little tired. Don't forget dinner, okay?" I didn't read it. I finished the last batch of pastries, wrapped orders, smiled at customers. That night, she was taken to the hospital by our neighbor. I wasn't there. I didn't even know until I came home and saw her slippers left skewed at the doorway, and a dry trail of blood cutting straight through my heart. No matter how many lifetimes I get to live again, I will never be able to erase that guilt. I sat beside her, still holding her hand. The last light of the day streamed through the window, casting a faint golden hue across her face like a dying candle. I lowered my head, whispering not for her to hear, but for myself. "This time, I won't let you fall alone." The bell above the door gave a soft chime as I stepped in. Warm air from the ovens greeted me, filled with the scent of cinnamon waffles, but my chest was frozen. The diner was unchanged. Faded red leather booths, old framed photos lining the walls, and that dim golden light that made everything feel like a memory. By the window, Noah Bennett sat waiting, one hand wrapped around a paper coffee cup, the other resting lightly on the scratched wooden table. He looked up, as if he'd seen me long before I arrived. "I've been thinking about you," Noah said. His voice was low, not accusing, just honest. I didn't answer, just pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "You want revenge," he said again, not an accusation, but a confirmation. I looked up. Noah's eyes were calm, but beneath the stillness was a kind of empathy I never expected. No hesitation, no judgment, just understanding. I shook my head slightly. "It's not revenge," I said. "It's justice." Noah nodded, then pulled something small from his jacket, a tiny black memory card, and set it on the table. The sound it made was barely audible, but to me, it was thunder. "Backroom camera," Noah said. "Someone made a backup before it got wiped." I froze. "Are you sure it still works?" I asked, voice rough. He shrugged. "Not sure, but if anyone can bring it back to life, it's you." Then he stood. No goodbye. Just left me there, with the tiny memory card and a milkshake already half melted. On the table, that little card felt like a summonser, a challenge. Crystal was gone. Across the room, Daisy lay with her back turned, blankets pulled high over her head like she was sleeping. But I knew she wasn't. I heard her breathing uneven, each exhale trembling slightly whenever I moved. I inserted the card into my laptop, taking a deep breath. My fingers shook slightly as I typed the code, eyes locked, heartbeat pounding like war drums in the quiet. The screen flickered black for a few seconds. Then, a grainy file loaded. I pressed play. The footage was blurry. The angle was high clearly from a hidden camera. A figure small, thin was being dragged into the changing room. The door slammed shut. A lock turned. Then cold water poured straight down. Kira shook violently. Then came the sound of fabric tearing. A short, stifled cry like something caught in her throat. My chest seized up. I stopped the clip before the attacker's face fully appeared. I didn't need to see. I already knew Crystal Tran. But worse, behind Crystal, another figure stood frozen. Not moving. Not helping. Daisy Yu. The eyes in the video too grainy to be clear still held hesitation. And then, she turned away. Quietly, as if looking away would erase the guilt. I pulled out my earbuds, placed my hand over my heart. It beat so loud I thought it might burst. With pain, with rage, with regret. The hallway outside the school nurse's office was silent. A fluorescent light above flickered, casting long shadows at my feet. I stood in front of the familiar door. Inside, I could hear Grandma Rose's soft voice speaking to the nurse. Weaker than before, but still warm. Something twisted tight in my throat. I didn't knock. I just stood there. In my hands was Kira's old journal, the one I'd found hidden in the shed. The last page, written in messy, shaky letters, read, "I wish someone had seen." I clutched it tighter, like I was holding her soul. And I whispered not to the living, but to the lost. I saw Kira, and this time, I'll make the world see too. I turned, eyes dry. I pulled out my phone and sent the restored video to an anonymous address, the parent council's hidden forum for Westbrook High. It took only seconds. But for me, that was the first step. From now on, every step I take will be another nail in the coffin of their lies.
Some wounds were buried so deep, even those who lived through them tried to forget. But memory doesn't sleep quietly. And once the truth begins to surface, no one can keep pretending. Celeste has laid the first stone toward justice with a video, a buried memory, and a promise made to someone who's no longer here. But this is only the beginning, because those who are best at hiding always know how to strike back.